This year on August 18th, we'll be commemorating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed women the right to vote in all American elections. And this upcoming anniversary makes this an appropriate time to look at the nature of women's political participation before and after suffrage in order to understand why the suffrage amendment is so important. Let's begin with a brief consideration of women's political activity in the years before 1920. And for the purposes of this discussion, political activity is broadly defined as efforts to shape public policy. And those efforts would include the use of moral suasion and moral influence. Essentially, indirect efforts, since women had little or no direct political power as individuals. And these early efforts at moral suasion are also rooted in 19th century assumptions about the moral superiority of women, as well as in the evolving assumptions about women's selflessness and focus on family and domesticity. For example, early 19th century moral reform societies in cities like New York and Boston focused on the eradication of prostitution and putting an end to the exploitation of young, naive women. The Women's Rights Convention at Seneca Falls in the 1840s was largely centered on issues like inheritance and property rights. Suffrage was considered a fringe concern. The convention was essentially an attempt to deal with the economic vulnerability of women at all levels of society. Women were also integrally involved in the creation of the Republican Party and in its first political campaigns in 1856 and 1860. Most prominent woman of the 1856 campaign was Jessie Benton Fremont, wife of the party's first presidential candidate. She played a major role in the development of the party's political strategy. She was an intelligent, independent, and incredibly politically savvy woman, but one of many women whose contributions were more than emotional and symbolic. Women in the new Republican Party were speakers on behalf of the party, participants at political meetings, and authors of campaign literature, much of which highlighted both the party's anti-slavery stance as well as women's moral superiority and the role of moral suasion in opposing slavery. In the period after the Civil War, as the United States developed into an industrial capitalist economy with widespread, large-scale manufacturing, women were involved in a wide range of political activities. Women were involved in the union movement through groups like the Knights of Labor, the Women's Trade Union League, and the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. They were, of course, involved with temperance through the Women's Christian Temperance League, Settlement House movement, which was designed to combat urban poverty and to aid in the assimilation of immigrants. Women were also involved in the social gospel movement through groups such as the Salvation Army and the YWCA. Finally, women were also involved in women's club movement. Think about Oprah's book club on steroids. The club women's movement consisted of white, middle-class, married women who advocated for things like green spaces in cities, clean milk stations, and maternal assistance and training for young mothers who had no female family role models around. As Americans wrestled with the social, economic, and political implications of a changing society, women were involved in addressing the social and humanitarian issues arising from that change. And that often meant that women were involved in political parties. Women were involved in the organizing, fundraising, and nurturing of the Populist Party in the 1890s, in the Bull Moose Party, the Progressive Party in the early 20th century, and women such as Emma Goldman and Margaret Sanger were involved with the radical Marxist, socialist, anarchist parties of the early 20th century. And in fact, women had the right to vote in school board elections and municipal elections, in some of the new Western states that joined the Union after the Civil War. So in short, we cannot say that the 19th Amendment was necessary to provide women with opportunities to shape public policy, or opportunities to be involved with a political party, or even with the possibility of having a public political presence, because that's clearly not the case. So what exactly is significant about the granting of complete suffrage to women and the right to vote in all elections? Why should we be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment? As historian Mary Beth Norton and others have noted, the federal suffrage amendment, for the first time, gave women complete citizenship. For the first time, women had a direct relationship with the state. Women, for the first time, had an independent, individual relationship with the state equal to that of a man. Essentially, for the first time, women were civic grown-ups who could not be denied the right to serve on a jury, the right to certain kinds of work, or access to educational opportunities because of a pre-existing marital contract that superseded any other commitments. Of course, independent personhood and equality can mean different things to different people across time, and can surely be shaped by race, class, and sexual orientation. But the idea that a woman can have her own separate, independent civic identity, that she is a citizen in her own right, apart from her father, her husband, or any other man, upended American ideas about the relationship between men, women, and the state forever. It is the foundation for the argument, for example, that a married woman, or any woman, can have credit in her own name, or that a married woman can choose to retain her maiden name. American ideas about the relationship between men, women, and government, and about the nature of citizenship, were changed forever because of the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920. That amendment helped move us slightly closer to becoming a more perfect union. That is worthy of both recognition and celebration.